Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Today Show here on the Disability Channel. I'm Dr. Laurie Davis, your host, and today we're going to talk about peace on earth and goodwill towards men. And what a timely time of the year to be talking about that. I am expecting a guest. She hasn't arrived yet, so I'll just keep things rolling along because I've got lots to say about peace. And get out your notepads and maybe there'll be an idea or two that comes to mind while we're talking. So just waiting for our guest. And if she doesn't land for whatever reason, no worries. We always find lots to talk about here on the Today Show. And if you're watching the show, I see we have some people streaming in live. Perhaps you could help me with the show today by making comments or asking questions. And let's see who's here this morning. I bet Kathy's here. Yes, good morning from the Disability Channel. Good morning to you. Good morning, Kathy. And whoever else is watching, please let us know that you're here. Oh, look at this. My other favorite fan, Sylvia from Niagara Falls. These girls are from Ontario. So welcome to the show this morning, ladies, and love to have your input and thoughts on our topic of peace and how this all started. A friend of mine in California contacted me about a workshop she was doing on peace, and she had some speakers here about a month or so ago. And I attended, and I was very intrigued by what they were talking about. And so there's going to be another event, if you want to write the date down, January the 11th. And Carol is involved in an organization, and they're all about promoting peace, particularly within the home and the family. Everybody's starting there. You know, this morning I heard on the Los Angeles news that a 15-year-old girl, just imagine this, walked into a school, a Christian school in Wisconsin with a gun, shot a teacher, killed her, shot another student, killed that student, and I forget how many others were injured. Where is the peace in that? There isn't any. Can you imagine being the mom of that 15-year-old? I often think about that when I'm talking about, you know, the violence and the crime and all that. But, and this is maybe not a very nice question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. In a situation like that, it would be so hard as a mom to lose your child like that. In a school shooting, I can't even imagine how horrific that is. But what about the mom of the shooter? I always think about that. Wow, like whoever thought you would raise somebody who would be a murderer? So the peace out there, the world's pretty chaotic right now, isn't it? And it's been chaotic for decades, actually, but more so now. And I guess it's because of the technology and the streaming and the instant feedback that we know more. You know, I think about my dad when he was a veteran in World War II. They got a letter, you know, every couple of months there'd be a piece of mail come in. And that was really the only way to communicate. And we didn't know the half of it. And we were probably better off in some way not knowing the half of it, of what was going on over there. But today, we see it all, right? It's in our face every day. So many years ago, there's quite a story to this, actually. So I'm going to share it because it's all about leading up to talking about peace. I was broadcasting in Vancouver, and I went out there to do a live show because I was broadcasting in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and I do my show on a Sunday night. This is how technology has changed. They would create a DAC, what they called a DAC tape, ship it out to Vancouver sister station, and they play my show a week later out there. So people from Vancouver were contacting us and saying, hey, we want to know more about your business, your programs. And I said, no problem. I also had met a young man. Well, he wasn't really young, but Alan. And he's probably passed away by now because we're talking, 20 years ago. So Alan called in. It was a call-in show, and Alan called in and he said, I'd like to meet you sometime. And I said, okay. So the next time I went to Vancouver, I met up with Alan, who introduced me to his friend Bill, who had just passed away. He had passed away, and he said, Bill would have loved your show. He would love it. And I said, oh, why is that? And he said, well, he always did a weekend retreat called the Happiness Retreat, Happiness Workshop. I said, well, that sounds really interesting. And I actually have the original transcript here. So I said, wow, tell me more. So he created this workshop where he would bring people in for the weekend, and they would build on their happiness level. So, oh my goodness, it must have been maybe 5 or 6 months later. I'm in my home in Nova Scotia, and I see this truck, Pure Later truck, coming up the driveway, and it was this box. And in the box was this beautiful letter from Alan, a little workbook called the Happiness Workbook, and letting me know that as the executor of Bill's estate, I would inherit the copyrights to the product. And I went, wow, that's pretty honorable. Now, Bill didn't include anything in a self-worth component, but he had some very good concepts about how to build inner peace, joy, contentment. And so we created what we called our happiness workbook. And I have a copy right here, so I'll just hold it up. Because what I did, I took Bill's notes, which I had inherited legally and everything. And because plagiarism is very big in our business, people can take your stuff and change a few words and call it theirs. And so this came directly from the author. And we created a beautiful self-directed workbook. There's no workshop attached because the happiness is a 300-page 168-page document. And what it does, it walks you through how to build that happiness, joy, and inner peace. So I just want to read what we have written in there because it just comes like this, and you every day for 21 days. 21 days. That's all it takes. 21 days. Imagine, of building joy, peace, love within yourself. So I started off by sharing this that I wrote, and I didn't write this. Bill wrote this, but we transferred it over. The pursuit of happiness, and you can interchange the word happiness with peace. The pursuit of happiness, because when we're happy, we are peaceful. And when we're peaceful, we're happy. So it's the same thing, really. The pursuit of happiness, and this is happiness talking to you and to me, most often takes place in the wrong place. Most folks think that I'm outside of them. So this is happiness talking to you directly. Most people think I'm outside of them. They think that I exist in a new car, a renovated kitchen, a trip, another person. Not so. Persons, places, and things can give the feeling of well-being momentarily, but this is not true happiness, only passing pleasures. The truth is, I exist not outside, but inside each individual. And each individual has been endowed by their creator with happiness and the capacity to enjoy that. The challenge comes for each individual because the challenge is they must access me. A young child can access me readily, but the older a child becomes, the ability to access me lessens. Why is that? Well, life deals some hard lessons along the way. And before too long, the individual must adopt a survivor mode. And that's really, a lot of us are in survival a lot of the time because of the trauma and things that happen. Each person must survive their good intentions, which often end in failure. They must survive the disappointments, the wrong choices, the bad timing, the bungled efforts, the unforeseen circumstances, the prejudices, and the small minds of others. And the heaviest challenge of them all, the rejection and the grief the individual feels with the loss of a loved one, either by separation or death. Then, too, somewhere along the way, the pursuit of happiness does turn outward. The individual becomes a butterfly catcher, believing that each elusive butterfly caught in the net, the new car, the renovated kitchen, a trip, another person, will bring happiness to them. Again, not so. The pursuit of happiness must take place inwardly, not outwardly. At times, it's not easy to find me inside of yourself, but it is not possible to find it elsewhere. Happiness, inner peace, joy is an inside job. So it is true that most folks are as happy as they make up their minds to be. This book, 21 days of workshops in here. This book is a hands-on book. It asks you to write by hand or print by hand. No typewriter, no computer, no texting. Just a pen will do. You see, happiness is an exercise in slowing down and taking time to get in touch with yourself and with me. Speediness defeats the purpose. If you wish to draw or color to better express yourself, great. There's lots of space. If you proceed slowly through this book, following the suggestions one day at a time for 21 consecutive days, you will be amazed before you are halfway through at your ability to access me. And what is more, you will have fun in the process by starting your own journal, something maybe you've always wanted to do. Well, the time is now, so enjoy your study of happiness, a subject you did not take in school because it was never offered. Yeah, and then what happens? It starts with day one. Day one. Look at that. So there's a message, there's an activity, there's a goal, and then you, before you go to bed, you make some notes. And I'm bringing this forward. I had to go dig it off the shelf because I thought, well, if for some reason my guest doesn't show up, I better be prepared with something. And then I thought, of course, we developed this 20 years ago. And thank you, Bill and Alan. William F. Dronsfield. And he said, and that is the original author of the Happiness Workshops, your circumstances may not be entirely to your liking, but they can be changed, and they are more likely to be changed when you are a happy person. You do have a choice to be happy or miserable. It is about what you choose. And it's just full of nuggets like that. And I had a client many years ago. Actually, she lived in Ottawa. She was a psychiatric nurse, and she had been injured in the workplace. A patient shoved her up against a shower, glass shower, and she got cut, and she had concussion and impact, and of course trauma. Anyway, she was on a couple of different kinds of antidepressants, and then she participated in 21 Days to Happiness, Joy, and Inner Peace. And bingo, she's off her meds. We can't make medical claims, but we do have outcomes that we can share, and I'm allowed to share that one. And I see Carol has arrived. So that's our intro today for our chat that we're going to have on peace, and it all starts with us. It's an inside job, one person at a time, one family at a time, one community at a time. So let's welcome the beautiful Carol Liage to the show. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm sorry.
No worries. Gave me a chance to do an intro and get prepared for your words of wisdom and what you're going to share with us today. So this is my friend Carol Liage, and presently she's staying in California, but a good East Coast girl like myself. And welcome, Carol. Good morning.
Good morning.
So we're going to get started because we wanted to hear as much as we possibly can from you. And I guess maybe let's get started on, we have some questions that we want to ask, but just a little bit about Carol and your inspiration to be part of a peace movement. What would you like to share at that to get us started? Who are you? Who are you?
Yeah, I had decided that I wanted to try adapting a public influencing campaign to some social problem or some humanitarian problem. And Robbie Motter from the Global Society for Female Entrepreneurs had invited me to an awards ceremony, a peace awards ceremony on World Peace Day in 2023.
Oh, wow.
And it was a lengthy Zoom call with women from around the world who were doing peace work. So I had been thinking about what issue I would like to address. And I was quite captivated by some of the women who were doing peace work. And so I decided I would try that. And I was coming to spend the winter with Robbie and the Global Society. So I thought, well, I'll take that on. And they were planning, the organization putting on the awards ceremony, Ladies of All Nations International at that time, was going to have a World Peace Summit in Mexico on World Peace Day 24, which would have been September 21st, 2024. So I was going to work with those two organizations to do that. It turned out that the two organizations ended up canceling the World Peace Summit. There was a problem with the Mexican government was subsidizing the event, and the presidential election intervened. And I don't know if you remember, but there was quite a lot of upheaval, and it was unsafe for Americans to go to Mexico at that time. Yes. So it was canceled. I did find another organization that I just loved to work with. It's called Pathways to Peace. And it's based in Minneapolis or St. Paul, where I come from. And they were going to do an event in San Francisco on the same day. So I stayed in California and worked with Pathways to Peace and kicked off a campaign. And I think you want to talk about how a campaign like that works. So the kickoff of a public influencing campaign is getting a bunch of organizations to collaborate on doing outreach work on the same day with their members and with media. So one of the participants was on stage in San Francisco in September, kicking it off, and we had
Nice.
about for the first year we had maybe 15 groups that participated.
Mhm.
Women's organizations and associations.
Nice. Nice. Well, you did a workshop. You did an event here about 3 weeks ago. I attended, and you had speakers, and it was a delightful time for me. It was timely for me to actually attend something instead of being on this side of the desk. So it was really, I thought it was very powerful, and it was on the same day as something else, I believe, too. So let's talk about. Tell us what you're planning for January the 11th. Let's talk about that event. And I'm sorry I can't share the screen with you. I meant to tell you that because of the studio setup. So, but if you have a copy of your flyer handy, we can pop it up on the in front of you there on the camera and get a look at it. So, so let's talk about the event coming up on January the 11th and how people get to go. There we are, right in front of you. There we go. There it is. And you have how many speakers there, Carol?
Well, yeah, 3 of them were last time, and they're on the flyer. The first half, let's say, the one you attended, we focused on. Well, let me go back, Laurie.
Yeah, sure.
What was involved in the campaign was recruiting organizations to reach out to their members and to the media about things that an individual woman can do. I mean, a man could do them too, but we weren't aiming at men. So the whole point was, instead of getting women to a protest or giving a lot of money or things, just simple things women could do. Now, I don't think this campaign could have been done, at least not by a couple of people, by just a few people, prior to AI being available to us. Chat GPT and Claude and Gemini and all these new AI things that are open to the public. Because what I did is interview people, experts. Not, I was not an expert in peace. Really didn't know anything about the peace community or movements. So I did all the interviews. I did the internet website kind of research, book research, articles, things like that. But then I put them through these AI engines and asked, here, look for these kinds of things. Can you come up with 50 things that I could do
Oh, wow.
to bring peace, inner peace, to bring family peace, to bring community peace? And then you can prompt these engines, and I don't want to go spend a lot of money. I don't want to spend a lot of time. I don't want to go too far from home. What can I do? And you'd be amazed how many things one can do. I had a book of lists that I think had 30 lists or something with, well, first of all, 50 things you could do in each of the areas.
Oh, wow.
I had, but then also lists of resources, websites, organizations, all gathered with the help of AI and maybe edited by experts, but not taking up what used to take months to do.
Right.
I was
Right.
able to do in days. So uh, so I had all that. Oh, so on the 30th of November, what we did was we found local experts, I'll call it, in personal peace. We have a lady here who's a minister and a nurse who used to run a county nursing department, and a yoga teacher. So she was perfect for talking about inner peace. And we also had a social worker who has spent many years working with families. So she was perfect for family peace. And then some of the women involved in planning with me here felt that at Christmas time, because it was before Christmas, that we should throw in financial peace, which really is part of personal and family peace, I think, or maybe also national peace. But I think, but it was just, in this case, added as part of personal and family peace. So we had someone who's a high-level executive of Primerica, which is a company that teaches financial peace. So she also spoke. So that was very personal and interesting. We recorded it. We made tip sheets out of it that were distributed before and after the event. Now, that left community, national, and world peace. What are 50 things you can do about community peace in your community? Well, that's too many for a workshop.
Right.
So for the personal and family piece, we did 5 on the tip sheets, and when in asking the speakers to do something like 5 things. Now for the 11th of January, we have 10 things. 10 things on the tip sheets. And I do have, let's see, I do have downloads already up. And I had attempted to work with the speakers on their 10 things, but it was getting to take too long. So
Right.
I took it from the research last year's, this year's research. I took 10 things, and then if they give me 10 things, I'll put that up too.
Right.
The people who register for the 11th will get all 6
Cool.
tip sheets. And the point is to give women options. And the channels are the media and the organizations to get it to them. And that's more what my end of it. But the ultimate objective is to give individual women some ideas and tools about things they can do to what I call radiate peace. And I call it that because if you're peaceful, it spreads. All these big organizations, UN Women, and all these big peace groups, they all have some sort of motto that says, "Peace is me. Peace begins in my heart. Peace begins with me." And they're serious about that. It's true, because there's an ancient poem by Lao Tzu that says, or Lao Tzu, however you prefer, when I was young, I wanted to change the world. So I spent my time trying to change the world. Didn't work out so well. Not how he said it in the third, but the idea. And then as I got older, I realized that to change the world, I needed to change me. If I had changed me, I would have changed my family. If I changed my family, they would have gone out and changed the community. If the community had been changed, it would have changed the nation. If the nation had been changed, it would have changed the world. So, and when you think about it, there are really so many things at every level that interfere with our peace these days. And I think if you start thinking about that without any information, it could be overwhelming. And particularly when you get into something like there have been threats or there are threats. There is not just threats, there are realities of conflict in the United States now. With these school shootings and racial slurs and hate crimes and terrorism and many things to worry about if you wanted to worry. But of course, worrying just makes things worse, doesn't do anything better. If you're metaphysical, you're actually creating conflict by doing that. There are also all kinds of family conflicts. The divorce rate is high. People do fight over money a lot.
Yes.
There's a lot of child abuse and spousal abuse and serious problems of violence in the home and in the community as well. And there are a lot of things you can do. So that's what we'll be discussing and instead of local experts, we're going to have world experts on the 11th.
So so let's say someone's watching the show right now, when we do have people watching live right now. So how does one get to go to that? What do I need to do to register? What's the easiest way for me to get to that?
There's one way, and you go to womenspeacecampaign.com.
Okay, I'll put that up on the banner. Okay, and you can register there?
Right. And when you get there, there's a button that says register, and it just takes you right to the registration form. Or you can read down the page, and on the bottom, you'll find the registration form.
Okay, I'm going to get you to proof this.
While you're doing that, I'm going to grab my water.
Okay, you bet. So this is a big project. Now, Carol, is that correct? womenspeacecampaign.com. I can edit that if it's not correct.
That is correct.
Okay, perfect. So people can go there to register for the workshop, or excuse me, the event on January the 11th. What time of the day is it on?
It's 10 to 12 Pacific time.
Okay. All right.
And then on the flyer, we have the ladies for international peace are now leaders for international peace.
Great. And you're going to have 5 speakers that day?
No. Well, yes. There are really only 3 speakers, community, national, and international. But then you're going to MC. Thank you very much. Robbie Motter from the original GSFE group was going to say I had asked her about saying a few words about what it was like from the time that it was nice and quiet and peaceful in Hawaii in 1941.
Yes.
Before the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. and what
Right.
it was like after
Right.
that,
Because she lived there. Yes.
how quickly peace could. Yeah, she's now 88.
Yeah.
She was 6 or 7 at the time, but
Hmm.
she has plenty of memories
Yes.
about things that happened in Honolulu
Wow.
because of the bombing.
Hmm.
So I thought that it would remind women that it can happen overnight.
Oh, yes. That happened overnight.
Yeah, literally
Literally.
overnight.
Hmm.
It was totally
Yeah.
unexpected.
Hmm.
So anyway,
So,
that's 4.
yeah, great. So, another question which you would like me to ask you, which I think is an excellent question. How is the Women's Peace Campaign? How is it new and different than anything else, do you think?
Um, some
What makes it different and special?
Yeah, what I'm talking about as a public influencing campaign is something I used to do when I worked in public affairs firms in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
The the reason it was really a lobbying. Public influencing campaigns were created in public affairs firms in Washington to back up lobbying
Okay.
on political issues, legislative issues. So hold on 1 second. I'm having some asthma problems this morning.
Oh, just take your time. Just take your time.
I wanted to.
Yeah.
Um, so when I was living in Boston, where I lived for many years, uh, I read a book called A Nation of Sheep, and
Oh,
I thought, and it was talking about these campaigns that were manufactured in Washington that um, that were aimed at changing public attitudes
okay.
and behavior to support some view of a problem
Hmm.
that was favorable to whoever was hiring the firm.
Hmm.
And today it's a social media thing. You know,
Right.
you remember all the fuss about the use of social media to manipulate public opinion in
Hmm.
the US
Hmm.
2016 election. You know,
Yes.
The Russians are going to come. The Russians are manipulating public opinion through social media. Well, that was, you know, back in 1980 and 1990. We didn't have social media to do that.
No.
The tactics were different. In those days, what happened was we would, well, let me tell you a little about the process. Do we have
Yes,
time?
I love that.
Okay. So let me use an example. I was thinking. I did a anti-drunk driving campaign. The client for this campaign was started. The initial money came from a restaurant chain that was a high volume alcohol. In other words, they had these restaurants, they owned 3 restaurant chains I won't name because
No.
they're still around, but they were high volume purveyors of alcohol. They were hangouts for drinking. They were for people who drank a lot. Most restaurants do not, even who serve liquor, don't serve a lot. They serve something like 5% of their income is from alcohol. These restaurants had like 80% alcohol and a lot of drunks driving away. So it must have been, was one of the must have been 84. It was when Reagan was running for president, and there was an organization called Mothers Against Drunk Driving,
Right. MAD.
driving,
MDD. Yes.
with these very vocal mothers who had lost children to drunk drivers. In those days, it was normal for people to drive drunk. Everybody drove drunk, and not much would be done about it, even if you killed someone. And these mothers were furious. And they got on TV and they made quite a stink during the elections here, which really forced anyone who had gotten elected that year to do something. So one of the proposals for doing something was something called dram shop legislation. And what that was that if the restaurant or bar served someone who got drunk and then went out and drove home and they killed someone on the way, the restaurant would be liable, financially liable for overserving them. That was a legislative proposal that was on the floor in committee in the legislature. And that would have been devastating to this particular company. So the vice president for public affairs came and wanted to do something. So we said we would do a public influencing campaign. So the first step really was to find out what could be done. And I had to do, again, the same kind of research I've done for this campaign, which is, so what could you do? So I found two things that were the centerpiece, or three things that were the centerpiece. One was obvious, which was cut them off. Cut off someone. But that had to be a policy change for the restaurant. Second thing was, if you're going to have to cut them off, you're going to have a staff training program. You're going to have to train your bartenders to cut them off. How do you do that without losing customers and starting fights and so forth? So there was a kid in Massachusetts who was teaching restaurants how to do that. Server education program. So that was a model we could use. And then the other thing was, in Sweden at the time, they were doing these designated driver programs, which were not at all known or popular in the United States yet. Or might never have been, because, as I said, drunk driving was so common in those days.
Oh, yeah.
That no one would have been against it, really. Everybody, I laughed at the beginning. People in my social circle, until I started studying all the facts and statistics and how you did these. You had to convince me before they convinced before I could convince everybody else. Unfortunately, I was a pretty heavy drinker in those days. In those days, we were young and we had a group of friends who, parties were pretty high alcohol occasions back then. So we put together an action sheet that restaurants should take these actions, and form something called Beverage Retailers Against Driving Drunk. That was the coalition. And with these points that we wanted to push, we started looking for allies. The National Restaurant Association represented the restaurants that only had a 5% mix. And it really actually was one of the groups that really didn't want to get too involved, because their members were mad at the big high volume retailers,
right,
rather than wanting to align themselves. It was more the Tavern League, the distilled spirits manufacturers. the beer brewers, groups like that joined the coalition. Big groups, powerful groups that put a lot of money into politics and a lot of lobbyists.
Mm-hmm.
So there were 3 levels to a campaign. One was to get together lobbyists to lobby, to agree on a lobbying stance.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we had that clear, to start looking for allies and adversaries, to find out, do a survey, in those days, a phone survey, to find out who agreed with us and who was going to oppose that, what this group was going to lobby for, which was to drop the dram shop and do industry-sponsored solutions, cutting them off. That is, we as an industry will promise to do these things if you drop that.
Mm-hmm.
We will do server education. We will promote designated driver programs. We will train our servers to, stop serving people who shouldn't be driving. So it worked.
Oh, yes.
And
Because
it worked by all these associations getting together, and doing outreach through the media, through events. The kickoff event was a big press event that was meant to create what they call a bandwagon effect. Used to be a bandwagon that went through town. Everybody would hop on board. So that was the Nation of Sheep idea, and that was the public influencing campaign idea, was to get a bunch of people to hop on board. Sort of like, everyone is doing it, you better get on board.
Right.
So
yes, well, we have all those regulations here, in all of our bars, and you have to be licensed to serve liquor now here in a bar or a restaurant. I know that because we had a restaurant and a bar, and that comes with training. Yes, you have to have they call it here your pro serve, in order for you to even be able to take a tray of liquor from the bar to a client who's having lunch. That server has to have their pro serve, which means they've taken the exam and everything in order to even be working.
like a professional server.
Yeah.
Oh, that's clever. The Canadian government made international news maybe last year for changing the government definition of what someone should drink. The United States still has something like a woman should not drink more than 2 drinks on a given day, or a given, and not more than 14 a week.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And a man, I forget, maybe twice that for a
Yes.
man. And then Canada used to have Canadian government used to have a similar standard.
Yes.
But last year they changed it to 0. What women and men should drink is really 0, they say.
Yeah.
So, yeah, well, that's a whole other issue. And as a matter of fact, in the personal things, I think I had a whole, maybe separate section, a list in my book of lists, all these lists on alcohol, because alcohol is responsible for a lot of unpeace, both in the family and in the community.
Yes. Well, when there's alcohol in the home, it creates chaos and confusion and control.
All those things, but it also causes violence.
Well, exactly.
It causes violence.
Yes.
And aggression. Yeah, Vern Johnson wrote a book called I'll Quit Tomorrow. It's an old book. I don't think it's in print anymore. but it was a book that was the only book I saw that really described if you're at a party and people are drinking, how do you tell someone who has a problem from someone who's just drinking too much? In those days, we used to call it alcoholics versus problem drinkers. There were people who could drink a lot, but were not addicted to alcohol, who were who just had bad manners or whatever.
Right. Well, we have like 5 minutes left. Isn't that something? This is the fastest hour of my day, Carol, when I'm talking with awesome people like yourself. Oh my gosh, I just love it. So let's see. Anything else?
Did I answer your question about what this campaign looks like?
Yes. Yes.
What the
Yes.
hope and how we were trying to adapt it to today's world.
Definitely.
And right now, incidentally, we're talking with some of the big peace organizations that were already doing similar things. There have been plenty of women's movements going back to prohibition.
Yes.
So we're talking with those about doing something collaboratively in September 25.
Oh, nice. That'll be great. So what keeps Carol engaged in this at this stage in life? What is it about it that inspires you to, be part of this now?
Well, I like the process. I hate to
Yes, that's
say
what I was
this.
thinking.
I have 100 issues I would be happy to take on. As a matter of fact, if I can ever figure out how to go that direction, with whatever time I have left, I would love to create an agency that does this kind of campaign for issues. But in the meantime, I'm really having fun creating, figuring this out. That's the fun part for me. The fun part for me is figuring out how to do this.
Well, see, that's because you're a strategist.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, a strategist and an organizer. I have a long history for those two things. Analyst, strategist, organizer.
Right. Well, you're the perfect person then to put it together. We couldn't have a better person then. All right, I'm in. And when I'm in, I'm all in. So we'll look forward again, just to mention January the 11th. Carol is hosting an online event, and we have experts coming in to speak. If you want to attend, you go to the website, womenspeacecampaign.com, and the enrollment form is there. And it's going to be held from 10 until 12 Pacific time. So that's 11 to 1 here in the Mountain Time area, and out east, 2 hours ahead. So maybe book January the 11th and show up. And I've been honored and invited to be asked to MC the event. I'm not going to be speaking about it because it's not my area, but it is definitely of interest to me. And of course, I guess indirectly we work to help people to develop peace within themselves. So it's connected that way. So Carol, any other closing remarks you'd like to make to our viewers to encourage them to think about creating peace for themselves?
Yeah, well, if anybody who registers is going to get the video from right away. I mean, the day that you register, you're going to get the handouts to download, the Zoom link, a link to join a private Facebook group where you can talk with other people and some of these speakers, and also the video or the recording from the first
event,
part, the personal, financial, and family part. The next part is what can you do to protect yourself and your family from violence and unrest in your community? What can you do if you run into violence or conflict or someone confronts you in your community? And the lady who's doing it runs a national program that's part of an international program called Nonviolent Peace Force. And for 30 years, they've been training people to go to war-torn and conflict-ridden areas around the world to teach people nonviolent
Oh,
uh,
wow.
conflict de-escalation
Neat.
processes and so forth. That community women, well, men and community people, but many women turn out for this, are the center on the feminine energy and values, and how we're raised really lends to a feminine, power in this arena.
Yes, I can see
And
that.
yeah, so we're going to have Anna Zoros from Nonviolent Peace Force. And right now they have pilot programs, if you will, on going into a first world country, not a war-torn country. And so they're in New York City, they're in Minneapolis, and they're in San Diego doing
Oh, wow.
programs with local people. And they build local coalitions of organizations that can teach people how to de-escalate conflict, what conflict resolution techniques, things like
Oh,
that.
very good. That's just going to be power packed. I can't wait. It's on my calendar, so put it on your calendar, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, and then we'll also have some people who we're going to have a couple experts who talk about what you can do without leaving your kitchen.
Great.
About national to contribute to avoiding or stopping or protecting yourself from international and national conflicts. So it's going to be useful. I mean, our goal is to be useful, not clever.
I love that. All right. Well, you've been watching the Today Show here on the Disability Channel, and we'll be back tomorrow. I'm interviewing an amazing veteran, Simon McGinnis, and he'll be here to tell his story. Same time, same station. So bye for now, and we'll see you all tomorrow.